Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is December 30, 2025. I want to thank Rob Grant, his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank Willie Schwartz for introducing me to today's guest, Warren Senders. Where are you calling from, Warren?
I'm in Medford, Massachusetts.
How cool is that? I want to thank you for doing part one. That was July 1st of this year. And the first question in part two is, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
I was raised as an atheist. My father's parents were Russian Jews who, when they landed in the New World, renounced all religion. My mother's parents were a mixed Episcopalian Catholic marriage. And the result of many such mixed marriages is that the children lose their faiths. My mother was fascinated by ritualized religion as a young girl, then abandoned it as she became a scientific rationalist, and had a religious conversion experience late in her life that moved towards a sort of liberation theology, world religion accepting Catholicism, small c, with doses of Zen Buddhism and Esalen, whatever else she could cobble together. I remain steadfastly atheist, but ready to accept the inherent mysticism of the incomprehensibility of large magnitudes of space and time. As a teenager, I was part of the infamous youth group Liberal Religious Youth, which was the youth wing of the Unitarian Church until it got its plug pulled, I think, in the early 1980s for too much sex and drugs. So a lot of my friends and colleagues and running mates were people that I knew from LRY.
Very cool. Thanks for being
LRY was one of the only it was the only youth group to be specifically named on Richard Nixon's enemies list.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Hey, thanks for being articulate and concise. I really appreciate it. Do you pray?
I do not pray and have never prayed. I do engage in ritualized daily activities of a contemplative nature, but I do not regard these as being directed in any way towards any supreme consciousness.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I'm going to pass on that question.
No worries. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Both constructions can be made to work. If you choose to view the world as the staging ground within which a variety of cosmic forces interact, then you arrive at a kind of Hinduist concept in which Shiva represents the destructive force and Brahma the creative force and Vishnu the sustaining force. And these three are engaged in a continuous sort of complementary struggle.
Yeah.
In which case, evil and good and neutrality, or whatever the various dimensions are that you wish to posit, can be construed as acting through individual human agents. If you choose to focus on individual human agents, then depending on the degree to which you allocate what would the correct word be? To allocate self-determination to those individuals, depending on how strenuously you wish to allocate self-determination to them, then you can agree that there are or are not evil people.
Yeah.
That is to say, if you as a thought experiment, if you push yourself all the way over into, kind of Sapolskyan, we exist outside of our determination. We have no agency. And I know that's a gross oversimplification of what he's saying. But if you wish to adopt a caricature of Sapolskyanism, where you would say that we have no agency, then obviously evil people can't exist. And so to the extent to which your philosophy allows individuals agency, then it allows them, or it inherently associates responsibility for the choices they've made. And I think probably where I'm like most human beings is that I think I have one version of that equation in mind at one time and a totally different version of that equation in another. The one thing that we know about successful models of the universe is that they're always in flux. Because anytime you try and nail that shit down, man, it will like hitting a blob of mercury with a hammer. It's not going to squash the mercury.
It's David Lee Roth, here today, gone later today. Okay, really good. Okay, so the hidden question really there is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set it up. First, Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from The Mob and the Samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I don't know what he means.
Yeah.
There's two words in there that are doing an awful lot of heavy lifting, and they're uncontrolled variables, and I don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he means by acknowledge, and I don't know what he means by enemy.
Yeah. But let's say
I have a strong sense that all four of these sage individuals meant very different things by the word enemy.
Oh yeah, they did.
Okay.
I mean,
so enemy is actually the word enemy is a reification of a whole bunch of extremely complex forces.
Yeah.
And so,
But let's say let me inject this one really quick. This skateboard philosopher, when I asked him that on the beach, he said, enemy. In the word name, as soon as you name them, it becomes an enemy. So that was a cute little play on words. You're being sophisticated, etymological kind of guy and just really focused on words. Say your daughter came home when she was younger and said, I'm being bullied. How would you advise her?
Start by my responsibility there is as a parent, and fortunately it didn't happen to us, but I was bullied as a kid.
There you go.
And so what I would tend to do now is I would start from a perspective that says these people are being shitty to you because something in their lives is shitty.
Yeah.
And you're not obligated to hang out with them. But if you retain the power to, if not forgive, at least explain what they're doing, then you have some kind of authority over them.
Yeah.
So if I can say, I know the reason you're being such a dick to me is that, you have a terrible home life, and I wish I could do something about that, but I'm only 12. Then you have a kind of power over the other person that you don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when I was a kid, my power was that they couldn't shut me up. So I got punched a lot, but on the other hand, they never succeeded in intimidating me into shutting up.
Wow, that is great. You never shut up. That's like, how do you deal with an enemy? Don't shut up.
Well, I mean, Pete Seeger dealt with an enemy in that movie by leading a sing along, and
Yeah, that's
then
another
just
one.
completely melting the guy, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's the kind of thing I'd like to be able to aspire to. But frankly, I think I'm too much of a dick.
I don't think so. Well, you've led perfectly into Nassim Taleb says games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. My friend said villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And one more is Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts that goes all over the place, and the question's not connected, but you can do whatever you want with these statements. The question is, does punishment work?
Hang on. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And added to that, the question of what is the actual purpose of the punishment?
Yeah.
If the purpose of having hangings at Tyburn was to enrich the pickpockets who profited greatly from extracting the wallets of the onlookers, then its effect on the prisoners or on the public morality was insignificant.
Yeah.
So, as the bumper sticker says, the system isn't broken; it's fixed.
That is good.
Right. So then, if the purpose of punishment is for a larger, more powerful individual to demonstrate to a smaller, less powerful individual that they can do anything they want and you can't stop me?
Yeah.
Then it doesn't matter whether it has any rehabilitative effect.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose of punishment? And then depending on that, then you'll know whether it worked or not.
Yeah.
An awful lot of these things serve as demonstrations of some kind of territoriality.
Really good point. There's a couple. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And so then to the extent that they demonstrate that,
Yeah.
then they've served their purpose. And, it may mean, whatever, like, you bite the tail of a venturesome baboon that comes a little too close to your, clan or whatever, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't do it again, but maybe it'll change the statistics. How do I know?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple more enemy quotes. This one I just totally deleted. I want to bring it up. I want to just say three more if you have anything else to bounce off of. The Chinese proverb goes, he who cannot agree with their enemy is controlled by them. Then American Indians indigenous say your enemy's your best teacher. And Walt Whitman says, I no doubt deserve my enemies. So it's just like, I mean, you're a climate activist. You're hardcore. In a sense, there's someone you don't agree with doing this. So you're making your point. It is, but are they your enemy? I mean, you want to enlighten them, but you want to enlighten other people to see what they're doing. So, I mean, any other thoughts? Yeah.
I don't see it that way necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm aware enough of larger term historical forces that I can switch into that thing where, I don't necessarily, I'm not saying that I personify evil, but that I can assign a degree of agency to large historical collective consciousnesses. And in which case all of us, we're riding along, whatever you and I are seeing when we walk down the street, that's our own particular version of the in-flight movie. But the plane that we're on has been headed in this direction for a long time. So the thing that what I'm interested in doing is trying to get enough people together so that we can change the direction of the plane from being one that was programmed a long time ago by apocalyptic fundamentalists who yearn for a fiery end to things. And then the way that I see it, if you wanted a fiery end to the earth and all the civilization, just as your holy book foretold, what agency would you use? I don't know about you, but I'd use fossil fuels.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the stuff that's around that burns. You want fire? Fine, here's fire. So to some extent, I see climate change as a self-fulfilling prophecy enabled back in the book of Revelation and helped along its way for over thousands of years by, various types of contemptible greed heads in Zappa's words. And so then, I can be transiently mad at those greed heads, but they're just like turds on the wave, man, and my beef is with the wave. The wave we're going in the wrong direction. And so, in the tactical moment, it's worthwhile shaming other people and acting like they have agency.
Yeah.
And in the philosophical moment, it's helpful to pull back and recognize that these are very, very large historical forces, and all of us have work that we have to do to balance our relationship between historical and immediate forces.
Yeah.
And part of, in my mind at any rate, part of wisdom is being able to maintain some kind of interplay between those different timescales of force.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the main thing McLuhan learned from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, is that you can turn a breakdown into a breakthrough. You can turn a rejection into a redirection. And Joyce was the first projectionist. Talk about in-flight movies. He was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago in Volta Cinema. And he basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Because these are the games that human beings play. And, when a new set of tools becomes available to use for storytelling, people will explore that. And then, at first, people will be doing it just to scratch their own creative itches, and then other people will be trying to make money out of it.
Yeah.
And then you have the duality of individual expression versus the popular imperative, and all the uneasy tensions between art and commerce and blah, blah, blah. And then some people may just want to go out and look at trees. But then on the other hand, you could just as easily say of Joyce, why do I need to read 4,000 pages of thunderous nonsense when I can just, I can just go to myself for 18 hours. I mean, Joyce wasn't writing for an audience as so much as he wrote in order to scratch some kind of particular itch that he had, that was nurtured inside that particular set of games, of ecosystems that existed between publishers and writers and readers and so on. And then, but when I was starting out in music and not really understanding anything, one of the questions that I tried to ask people who knew more about music than me, I'd ask, why are there chords? And nobody ever actually gave me an answer that was really satisfying.
Yeah.
And of course, the reason for that was that most of the time they'd never thought about it so much. They just, that was what you had. And for me, I didn't recognize that it was an inherent necessity of the form. And so much later on, I'm able to answer my question, which is to say, music is a culturally determined game of sounds in combination with one another. And in this version of the game that's played in this culture, the games of sound combination involve sounds happening simultaneously that have pitch attributes. And then they've been named as different types of chords. And so if you want to play this version of the game, you have to learn this game.
Yeah.
And I think I would have recognized that when I was 15. I think if someone had said that, then I would have gone, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it probably would have been a lot easier. But then on the other hand, I was a weird 15-year-old. So,
yeah. Okay, Warren, you have ESP because we're going to go into music now. And you've covered your background deeply in a lot of your bio on your great website, many YouTube videos, and many links. So I do suggest people, if they want to delve into that, it doesn't mean you can't touch on those, but you jump to the next question after I go, well, what was the tipping point in your calling to be a musician? You've covered that, but you can go into it. You touched on, through some sort of ESP, the exact question I ask after that, which is a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a Warren song? I know it's maybe you don't write songs per se so much, but what role does intention play in that creative process, being a musician? I mean, let me just ask you, do you compose music?
I do.
Okay, then the question's valid. What role does intention play when you write a Warren song? It's not, or Warren composition. It's not a commission. It's just Warren. What role does intention play?
The degree or lack of degree or quality of intentionality that's manifest in any one particular piece of music is specific to that piece and not necessarily to others.
Yeah.
So if I want to write a completely indeterminate piece, then that means that I should study ways of evading intentionality.
Yeah.
And incorporating that into the structure of the piece in some way.
Yeah.
In other cases, there may be something that needs to be absolutely through composed. And so the amount of and type of intention that gets used in a piece of music is one of many variables.
Yeah.
Now it is, shall we say, a governing variable in kind of the same sense that the particular performance constraints or structural constraints that I'm working with are. So if I'm working for an ensemble of people that have no experience in using chance procedures, then it means more time spent rehearsing them.
Yeah.
And so, those are factors to take into account.
Yeah.
But I think there are different types of intentionality.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I like one, sometimes I like another.
Yeah.
That's a part of whatever story it is, or whatever kind of questions I wish to ask myself. And so if I say, well, my game this week is going to be to write a nifty contrafact on a 1930s, on the chord changes of a 1930s novelty tune, then I'll do that, and that's the game. And the game is 32 bars long, and it's in 4/4 time, and it's in this and that, and then these are the governing constraints of the game. And if the next thing is that I want to arrange a string quartet and voice using chance procedures and timings and text, then there has to be another set of parameters that you twiddle with.
Yeah.
And then if I'm singing a composition on the roadside and I come up with an exercise that I want to do in order to gain control over a particular type of metric modulation or whatever, inside Hindustani teen tal at 118 beats per minute, starting on beat number 7, then I have to compose that.
Yeah.
And some of them are meant for the long term, and some of them are meant for the short term. The goal with the Hindustani exercise is to be able to compose it, memorize it, execute it, have it available in memory a day later, and then forget it.
Wow. Well, Duchamp says there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your listener, your potential listener, when you're writing your composition?
Again, that's another variable to contend with.
Yeah. Okay, now, what's your main instrument now? I know it's your voice, but do you have one instrument that you kind of use?
The instrument that I spend most time playing recreationally for my own enjoyment is guitar.
Okay. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Like knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter and a camera extends our eyelid. Maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What does the guitar extend for you? What humanness?
The guitar is the guitar in general is the confluence of a variety of different historical forces, and the guitar for me is the confluence of different historical forces.
Yeah.
And so in a day's practice or a week's practice, it will represent different things. What it has represented for me over the course of my life and career as a musician is almost entirely not a vehicle for performance.
Yeah.
I perform very, very rarely on guitar. The guitar for me is a companion in research.
Yeah.
And the research can go anywhere. I live in this little cubicle, so I'm surrounded by pieces of sheet music and music theory and music history and this. And part of my life is that depending on the day or the week, I'll reach at random into the shelf and pull something out and go, I don't know, I'll study this for a while.
Yeah.
And then as I do that, I try and relate it to whatever other things I've studied and what I study in the long term.
Yeah.
Because I never felt that I had any kind of coherent, natural sense of harmony. Then I've devoted my life to studying harmony, so that I can try and figure out what makes it tick. I'm still scratching away at the outer surface of that, man. That's a big mystery there.
Well, again, you're anticipating this big question that I got really solidified from reading one of your articles with the Ravi Shankar quote. But before we go into that quickly or whatever, slowly, what's the function of music?
Music is a human behavior, and as such, it necessarily has multiple functions.
Well, give me one, because I'm going to read off 16 functions of music that I've accumulated from all these great people, and you can play off of them. But tell me one off the top of your head. If I was just going to say, hey, what's the function of music? What's one you would say?
Okay, well, the function of music that I return to most often is music is a communications device enabling thoughts, ideas, and understandings of time to be transmitted across large spans of time with communication available between past, present, and future.
Yeah, that's all times are happening now. That was good. That's like really good, because it's like, I think you touch on, but music's always happening, and we're just kind of tapping into that. It's happening.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So Zappa said he was in church when he was a teenager, and he saw the candle flame move when the choir sang. So he said music is air molecule sculptures. And Igor, well, then somebody says there is no function, and that's also goes along with Igor Stravinsky giving lectures on music means nothing. Cage said that it soothed the soul, making it susceptible for divine intervention.
Yeah, but that was what Gita Sarabhai told Cage.
Told Cage, very good. Yeah. So as I say these, you can go, wait, I want to respond, or I'll just list them. You interrupt.
I mean, if you want the actual, if you look at the actual functioning of human beings in society, there's a list. I believe it's 10 specific functions that are enumerated in Alan Merriam's book, and they cover pretty much all of music's functions in society.
Oh, good. What's the title of the book?
Hang on a second.
Okay. That's good, because it's been fun gathering these, because there's a couple. Anyways, I can look it up, but
I've got it right here.
You know where it is on your bookshelf. I'm impressed.
Of course, I know where everything is on my bookshelf.
It's Marion.
No, Alan P. Merriam.
How do you spell last?
Merriam. Merriam.
Merriam. Thank you. What's the title of the book?
The Anthropology of Music.
Okay. Well, let me just read these, and some of them will correspond, and I can go Google that later. I'm really appreciative. No one's ever told me this one. Okay, so after Cage, the next one I have is, it's a warning. That's Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead. It's a survival technique, or it's hunting season, so they hit a log. Dylan Buston said the function of music is dance. Norman Zamchek, right there from Boston, keep us from going insane. David Moss, it's the sound of being alive. Now, this is the major run through that covers a lot. Entertainment, pleasure, nostalgia, express creativity, connection, community, ceremony, ritual, learning, stir emotion. Now, here's one I would love for you to listen or respond. Brett Fisher, Claire Fisher's son, self-awareness.
Okay.
And then my other friend, it kind of goes along. The function of music is to hypnotize people to be themselves. What do you think of that one?
I mean, there's an awful lot of words in there that are doing a great deal of heavy lifting. I mean, that strikes me as what Daniel Dennett called a deepity, which is something that sounds profound, but does not actually have much substance when you inspect it. I'd have to know what an awful lot of those words meant before I could go along.
but that's sort of like Brecht saying, I want art that activates people. I don't want art that puts you in a trance. Well, maybe if you go in a trance from music, it will in the long run activate you. So that's the word hypnotize. I think it's like, deadheads.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at actually as an ethnomusicologist,
Yeah.
then music has a variety of specific functions in society.
Yeah.
And it is, there aren't that many. So there's music that has a function in ritual, and music that has a function as entertainment, and music that has a function in social dance, and music that has a function in preservation of particular types of cultural hegemony.
Healing.
Right, exactly. And so there's a list of about 10 of them, and it pretty much covers everything.
Well, that's why I keep inventorying. I'm glad these highbrow anthropologists did this, but I want to keep it moving. I remember hearing this woman on the radio, and she's a successful author, and she says, I was raised in the Caribbean and my mom never read a book. And she says, but she knew what to do when a tsunami hit from a song that she sang.
Right.
So that's again.
So that's one of the things that music can be, is a way of carrying information from the past to the future.
Yeah.
And as such, it's part of a culture.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is something that we have lost with the commodification of our cultural product.
Yeah. But the little kids can still hum a song that you've never heard, and people can still whistle and go down the street and feel comfortable. Right. It's beautiful. So Edgar Varese said it was organizing sound. He emphasized timbre and rhythm over the traditional melody and harmony. So that's where I wanted to lead into the Ravi Shankar quote that I got off of one of your website articles. For better enjoyment of Indian music, Western audience should forget about harmony and counterpoint and mixed tone colors and relax rather in the rich melody and rhythm. That is so well put from Ravi in 1956. So I'm getting to the question, Warren, and this is adding Aaron Copland. He says the 4 elements or ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. I already know there's more than that, and you do too. But let's just go with those 4 basics. The first one I would love you to describe is, what is tone color in non-academic terms?
Okay, tone color in non-academic terms is, if you try to make that sound with your mouth, what shapes do you make with your mouth?
Oh, that's good. Very good. I never got that answer. That's beautiful. Now, those 4 elements, how do you integrate them? How do you use them? Melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. Do you emphasize one more than the other? Do you go along with Ravi saying, just go for the rich melody and harmony, forget the other? No, excuse me. Just go for the rich melody and rhythm, forget about the harmony and counterpoint. Any discussion on those 4 elements according to Copland?
Well, I was obviously attracted to melody and rhythm from very early on, because that's what drew me into studying Indian classical music, and also, for that matter, into studying African music.
Yeah.
And my reaction to harmony was not as immediately comprehending, in the sense of finding an intellectual point of grasp. So it took me a while to get that. When I compose, I don't necessarily think of using those things.
Yeah.
That can be. That's one of a variety of set of tools, but sometimes I'm not interested in that at all. And one of the biggest things that was helpful to me in composition was Alan Lomax's system of musical analysis, cantometrics, which defined various types of musical organization and voice production and ways of handling musical and rhythmic and textual materials that existed cross-culturally. And that provided me with a conceptual palette that was not necessarily that of the Western Conservatory. So the cantometric system, I would say, was extremely helpful to me and influential to me in my work as a composer.
Wow. You're holding your sign. Your YouTube channel has so many shots of you holding your sign and you're singing. When you're singing, holding that sign, what's playing? Is it melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color? Is there any kind of thing that's more emphasized, or it's all four equally?
I'm singing Hindustani music, and so I'm singing a repertoire that has its roots in a particular part of the world in a particular historical period. And I'm either singing traditional or original material that's composed inside the melodic and rhythmic and formal structural guiding principles of that tradition.
Yeah.
And that has been my discipline for almost 50 years. So that's the thing that I do. These are songs that I love to sing.
Yeah.
And these songs don't make use of harmony in the Western sense, because if they did, they would be Western songs. And they're not. Just like the Western songs that I sing don't make use of melody and rhythm in the ways that Indian music songs do, because if they did, they would be Indian music. There are occasional points of confluence. The 1930s novelty tune Stumbling by Zez Confrey goes, stumbling all around, stumbling all around, stumbling all around, so funny, stumbling here and there, stumbling everywhere, and I must declare, which that da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da is a Hindustani tihai.
Did he know it?
Of course not. Maybe someone brought him back an Indian 78, and there was some 1930s Indian film song, and he got it from there. I mean, stuff like that was happening all the time, but it's not rocket science.
Is that a Yiddish song?
No, it's like Zez Confrey. Zez Confrey composed Stumbling and Kitten on the Keys.
Kitten on the Keys, okay.
And I think Stumbling has to be one of the most commonly interpolated songs into other chord progressions. You'll hear people do that all the time. Da-da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. Very, very, very common.
What's his name again, Warren?
Zez. Zez Confrey, Confrey.
And is he about what year is he making that song?
That song must have been in the early 1930s, I guess. I don't know, maybe the late 1920s. It has a kind of flappers dancing, the Charleston kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to look that up. Okay. My friend says, so you touched on this too. My friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you learned how to play. Theory, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste?
When I was studying with my guru, with Devastaliji in India, he'd be teaching me all of this stuff, all of these, complicated byways and different forms of melodic and rhythmic digressions that I could get into in handling the ragas. And I would say, Guruji, how do I know when to use this? What makes it right? And he would say, it should sound nice. And at the time, my reaction, this was a pretty standard thing. It should sound nice. And at the time, my thought was like, well, thanks a bunch. Yeah. But as I get older, then what I realize is that when someone speaks directly and clearly from the heart, it sounds nice.
Nice.
And when someone's artifice gets in the way of their speech, it doesn't sound nice.
Yeah.
And similarly, if your improvisation speaks eloquently from your heart, then it sounds nice.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And so that boils down into having something to say, having the imagination to uh, get it into singable terms, and the technique to sing it.
Yeah.
And then the readiness to get out of the way of yourself so that you can actually hear how it sounds and judge for yourself whether you sound sincere or not. Am I convinced?
Yeah. Well,
A
most
lot of the time, right? You know, we sing something and then we listen back to it and go, oh, geez.
yeah.
If only I just, or that, I wish I had, or that one right there, that didn't, yeah, I wasn't aiming for that, or, ooh, that note, I didn't like that note.
Well, Warren, most people say, how do you acquire taste? They go, exposure and experience. I go, okay, I want to hear people say something more than that. Oh, it's a gut feeling. But you saying it sounds nice and then elaborating what that means was very helpful. But here's the McLuhan quote with the word taste in it that I'm curious your ideas about. Marshall said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
Whenever I'm confronted with one of these statements, my first question is to look for which word is the fulcrum.
Which is it? Well, see, he says two things there. Most
Yeah.
people ignore the beginning. Song is slow down speech. He's a poet, he's a metaphorical, but he's an academic, so they think he's saying it literally. But it's basically, you know, music in other cultures and you form aesthetics. You didn't just stick with the Allman Brothers and Tom Lehrer and Sun Ra. You went into this 50 years of this. So when he says the reason cultures have different musical tastes is ultimately connected to language difference, drop the word ultimately. Is it connected to language difference?
Yeah, but see, ultimately that's a tautology. That just says different cultures are different.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's true. It's not, it's not earth shattering.
But does it say that that's it? Now, can you take it one step further? Did it spur you to think or say anything else? Yeah, it's true. That's enough. That's good. But is there one more, like,
You got to help me as I turn my sourdough. So that's all right.
no problem. You mean you're a culinary artist besides being a musical?
I just do a little bit of bacon bread. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. So just give me 1 sec.
Oh, no worries at all. And the you go into that, but the no-brainer question while you're doing your duties is, tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
It's going to be easier for me to answer the first question than the second.
Yeah, no, then do the first one first. Yeah.
Different languages have expressed different conceptions of space, time, interpersonal barriers, and of some of the other things that are integral to differentiating different cultures. And so the poetic language of the Hindustani Khayal, which is Braj, that's the 15th century dialect of Hindi, in which the song texts are composed. that language uses a variety of fixed poetic tropes that can only be used in certain ways. And so while it is possible to compose new songs in that language, and people do it all the time, including non-Indian practitioners of the idiom. And overwhelmingly, those creations are plugged back into the tradition without having any kind of composer credit attached. Because that's just the way we roll. Then the issue of a melodic or musical language, in the sense of a governing aesthetic, the thing that makes a particular music sound the way that it does. Any one repertoire piece and any one collection of such pieces functions as like a body of work in a particular language, a particular poetic form, a particular song form, a particular medium. And so if I say, well, you want to become a Hindustani singer, then you have to acquire a repertoire of pieces inside these domains. And that comes along with a set of particular constraints and stipulations and areas within which mistakes are acceptable and areas within which mistakes are unforgivable. And so to learn that particular version of the music game requires, doing whatever you have to do in order to learn that game. If the rules of the game are you have to learn how to do this from a single individual person for a period of not less than X number of years before you can be accepted, then it's like, okay, fine, you do that. It just means that, no, they won't accept people who picked it up off of YouTube. Right? If you want to be like a member of, some martial arts society, they won't accept you just because you can kick a board. You have to like demonstrate a lineage or whatever. So then you want to be part of that particular ecosystem, you go by their rules because they're the ones who make the rules.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing, the thing that's really interesting is that wherever we go, human beings make these kind of rules.
Yeah.
We have these kinds of behaviors.
Yeah.
Just like, there has never been a single human society that doesn't have some form of competitive sports.
Yeah.
Right? Beats the hell out of me. Why? But, it's just like that's a universal human behavior. And there are never three teams.
There's always two. That's right.
Two teams, right? So it's like if you wanted to make a science fiction thing, then you could you could imagine, okay, in this society, there's always three teams. And that, there have been a variety of novels that have versions of that.
Yeah.
So, I tend to think because of my background in learning ethnomusicology and learning kind of musical systems theory, then whenever someone asks a question about a single musical idiom, my response is to say, well, how does this fit in the larger terms?
Yeah.
There's this big, long, overarching sweep of human musicality that manifests in these weird little culturally specific ways. And, any single one of them, if you want to go into it, there's an infinite amount of stuff to be learned and an ecosystem of people that has built up around it. In some cases, a very big ecosystem. In some cases, a very small ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. There was an ecosystem that built up around your cousin's friend's garage band in Cleveland in 1965, when all the neighborhood kids used to come and listen to us practice.
Yeah.
And that ecosystem, it only lasted for July and August. But everybody who was part of it still remembers it.
Yeah.
Remember when you and Joey used to play? That was great, man. I still remember when he finally learned to play the solo on Wipeout.
You did. Mike told. I was going to say Wipeout, but that's That is amazing what you just said, because that's Pascal, the mathematician philosopher. He says, in order to understand anything, you have to know this end of the spectrum and that end and everything in between. And then you go to Thelonious Monk and music is math. You're a comprehensivist. You get the big picture. That's study the patterns and get comprehensive awareness. What's more fundamental, music or language?
They're both manifestations of the same drive.
Yeah. What is an instrumental, title of an instrumental that makes you laugh?
Instrumental that makes me laugh. It's a good question. Because there's different kinds of laughter. There's
Yes.
broad,
Good.
there's broad slapstick laughter of the type
Yeah.
that was exemplified by the guys I knew who put together an album called A Rubber Band Christmas. That was just them. They owned a recording studio. It had a couple of extra hours left on someone else's time. And they recorded a CD, and it wound up selling a few 100,000 copies about 25 or 30 years ago. And they got invited to play on Letterman and stuff. And they're just going on a rubber band and some popsicle sticks. And it was just, I mean, it was hilarious, but there's
Yeah.
only so much of it you could take. And then there's the laughter of the unfamiliar. And so the first time that I heard there was a record of Guatemalan brass band music by the San Lucas Band.
Yeah.
And the first time that I heard it, I really thought it sounded very stumbling and awkward, and
Yeah.
it made me laugh.
That was instrumental. There you go.
Yeah, and it took a couple of years before I listened to it finally with a guy who knew more about that music, and then he was able to guide me into hearing it, and then I started hearing it as this very beautiful kind of village heterophony that was extremely emotionally rich. But at
Yeah.
first it was bewildering, and then there's more sort of self-consciously silly music. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've collected that stuff over the years. And then there's some stuff that makes you just laugh in delight.
Yes.
There's a passage in the first album by Mingus Dynasty on Mingus's piece Boogie Stop Shuffle.
Yeah.
And Don Pullen takes a
Ooh.
piano solo
Ooh.
on the piece. And then midway through, he does this incredible Don Pullen run. It's just like watching Nijinsky just go up in the air and stay there forever. And sometimes I laugh when I hear that because it's the laughter of exaltation.
Dude, I have a Don Pullen quote on my wall. Now, just really quick, what's the title of the song again?
Boogie Stop Shuffle.
Oh, Boogie Stop Shuffle. Thank you.
You must have heard that.
Oh my God, it's in my song. I can't wait to send you my song.
Mingus Dynasty, the very first Mingus Dynasty record, I believe it's called Chair in the Sky. And then Charlie Hayden takes a solo later on where he completely dissolves the blues form.
Wow.
Which is sort of is a perfect, typical Charlie Hayden thing to do.
Oh, dude.
And so like that, that kind of laughter that comes with just like simultaneously seeing something that you never knew was possible, and at the same time seeing it done far beyond the boundaries of what is possible.
Yeah. This you injecting Charlie is really fast. I go up to Charlie. I says, dude, you play an old hillbilly Appalachian song in the middle of a Ornette Coleman song. What's the name of that? He goes,
John Henry.
No, he says, that's Ojo Clark. I said, who wrote it? And he goes, nobody wrote it.
He plays Old Joe Clark, and he also plays John Henry.
Yeah. But anyways, I love that he said nobody. But now we're touching on Monk, because Monk is one of my answers. There's certain Monk songs will make me laugh. It's an instrumental.
Sure.
Okay. Monk says the silence is the loudest sound in the universe. I wanted to go into silence for a second. How do you know when not to play? How do you know when to incorporate silence?
I built an entire piece around that. The premise was that different musicians who were part of it were operating at different tempo levels and were assigned a set of pitches within which they had to compose a sequence of notes that ran continually for a stipulated number of beats. So it might be that you're in this group and you're composing a sequence that's all in dotted quarter note values, and you have these 4 pitches to work with, and your job is to make things that are 5 notes long, and just to repeat that over and over again. And then your assignment was to improvisationally decide not to play from beat 2 of this cell to beat 4 of that cell further down the line, but to keep it going in your head.
Yeah.
So that these silences were the only intentional part of the whole thing, and everything else was stipulated. And as you can imagine, this took a lot of rehearsal and a lot of careful explanation. And I was able to get a couple of good performances, including 1 or 2 by a big band that I was working with. One where one of the trombone players took an absolutely epic solo that included easily 25 to 30 seconds of silence. That was like absolutely hair-raising.
But the question is, how do you know when that it's time? How do you know when not to play? You're in a music form too that it's like there's so much. It's where's the space there, dude?
And that's one of the big questions that I have to contend with as a Hindustani improviser, because we have a kind of maximalist focus. And so the temptation is to run on continually. So I periodically put myself through various exercises in creative timing and introduction of space. So for example, and I typically do this type of work, whatever I practice on a Monday is what I practice for 5 days. So in this case, I did a 5-day stint where my practice was that I had a variety of set material that I was going over, and then I used the motion of different cars coming up to the intersection where I stood as starting and stopping points. So it'd be when that car crosses that lamppost, I will start this melodic sequence, and when it reaches this lamppost, I will stop. And so then that was a way of removing intentionality to a certain extent from my decision about when to start and stop. And therefore, the effect of removing intentionality is it forces you to pay attention to what you just did.
Yeah.
And to how it sounds. And so then by removing intentionality from the pauses, then there are things that I cannot escape. I have to do it that way. And so then that meant that I had to create a line that finished in time.
Yeah.
And another times I've done exercises where I will stipulate a melodic line and sing it over and over again, and then practice leaving out different parts of it.
Yeah.
So that I'll sing this, 32 note melody, and then I'll leave out these 2 beats, and then these 2 beats, and then these 2 beats, and these 2 beats, until I've gone through some particular protocol. so that I have the muscle, I have the creative synapses lined up to pause. And I'm reminded, when we're talking about Monk, Miles said something very cogent about Monk. Miles said, Monk plays rests.
Oh, wow.
Which, I mean, Miles was always pithy, but that's really pithy.
That's really good, because my friend said, Monk heard all the notes Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
If you look at the video that's available of Monk, some of the time you can see he's got action going on with his non-pedaling foot.
Yeah.
That it's a third hand.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's like doing kind of a Fats Waller organ bass thing that's happening down there with his foot, and his foot is not keeping time.
Yeah.
He'll play like a couple of crashing chords, and then his foot will go gong gong ba 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 ba. And that's not there on the records, but you can see it when he's in the movie, right? And it's like, oh well, now his playing makes so much more sense.
Henry Butler was playing with Charlie Hayden right down the street, and his foot was moving and hitting the floor so loud it was driving Charlie nuts. And he told the owner of the club, and he says, "Can you do something?" And Will slipped in a rug under Henry's foot. Just when it went up, he just slipped it under there, and Henry just like, what the fuck, because he's blind, so and very monkish. But this is you almost expanded on John Cage by explaining that cars moving, in the light post thing, because Cage said silence is the sum of all the sounds of the environment.
And that's what Murray Schafer said also. Murray Schafer said that in order for a sound to be free of onset distortion, it would have to have begun before our lifetime, before our birth. And in order that we should know no interruption in it, it should have to continue after our death. But such a sound would be perceived by us as silence. Wow. And that is the genesis of the Hindu concept of the anahata nada, the unstruck sound, which is the sound free of impact distortion and sustained infinitely, which is the genesis of the sound of the Hindustani tambura. Wow. Which is played in such a way as to minimize the initial attack and maximize the overtonal sustain.
Okay, Warren, this is a contrast of two silence quotes to step off on that. Roscoe Mitchell, silence is perfect. Bob Dylan, experience teaches that silence terrifies the most.
Well, I think one of the things that experience has taught us about Bob Dylan is that he is not going to let 20 minutes go by if he can't fill it up with more words. His verbal expression, sometimes it calls to mind, those stories about how, like, well, that's old Clancy. He's up there in the woods prospecting. He comes down once every 2 years, and heaven help you if you're the one who gets to talk to him. Right? The logorrheic prospectors who hadn't seen another human being for a decade, and then right? And so, Dylan sort of seems a little bit like that.
Yeah.
But
it is. I mean, we know that, but silence does terrify. We used to pre-cell phones, like, where are you? Well, you don't even need that. GPS will tell you. But in the old days, you'd go, are you there? If there was silence.
Right, sure.
In the first podcast with you, that's one thing that I just adore, is that you would stop, and I'd put this as a suggestion to all my guests, silence is okay. And some people just sit there and think, and the the listener might be going, what the fuck? Might something go wrong? It's like, no, stopping and having, even Pascal said it too. He says, if we could learn how to sit in solitude in a room, we'd solve all the problems of the world.
I should try getting a rainbow colored pinwheel and then just blow on it continually. So it looks like the rainbow cursor of doom, but I'm actually there. That would be the equivalent of handwriting an automated out of office message. Well, look, I mean, I think what Roscoe meant when he talked about silence was something very different.
Yeah.
Because he was coming out of the whole Association for the Advancement of Creative Music kind of thing, which was all about Black American artists asserting agency over the entire corpus of available music, including Western classical music. So their approach to that was to say, fine, you want non-intentionality, you want silence, we're going to do that, but we're going to recast it in Africanist terms.
Yeah.
Which is like one of the really great things about that whole movement was they wanted to say, they said like, we can do Mozart. Fuck you. Well, of course we're going to do Mozart. We're going to do Mozart on our terms. Right. And then someone like Muhal Richard Abrams had that quality.
Yeah.
And so then I don't know this for certain because I'm not as up to date on all of the history. I'd have to revisit George's book to get up to date on my AACM history. But I mean, I know that Roscoe knew Cage's work.
Yeah.
And was engaged with that and was addressing various of these. There was that whole movement that was happening there. Braxton was doing his 4 alto records and Roscoe was doing his record. His first record was Silence, right? Or Sound. I mean, and so they were trying to find a specifically Africanist, Afrofuturist, Afro-American, whatever, great black music. That was their
great classical,
right?
Great classical black music, something like that. Yeah.
Great black music, ancient to the past and ancient to the future. And so when Roscoe talks about something like that, of silence as perfection, then my take on that is that he's taking the notion of silence as being the composite of all the sound that there is. Yeah. And it's the job of the musician to selectively filter out those things which she or he wishes you to hear.
Beautiful. I wanted to interject an aside. Do you know the album that Art Ensemble of Chicago did as a soundtrack for a French film called
Les Stances à Sophie?
Yeah, the song called now I can't, Theme de Yo-Yo. It is the most badass funk song of all time.
Right.
And Fontella Bass sings it. Oh my God. That is
right.
Okay, here's 2 more silence quotes. 1, A Wee Wee, the Chinese artist. For me, silence is music.
Okay. I mean, there's two uncontrolled variables in there, so I don't know what he means.
Okay, here's the last one. Thomas Carlyle. Speech is of time, silence is of eternity.
Ooh, well, lot of fucking stuff. You see, what Carlyle is talking about there is not rhetorical silence, in which I posit a question and then wait while you tremblingly inch closer to the edge of the pew in order to hear the content of my peroration. What he proposes there is good English romantic silence, in which 2 bosom friends take a long hike and then sit together on the edge of a cliff contemplating eternity for half an hour before finally getting up and saying, "Getting a little warm today, isn't it?"
Well, they asked,
by Jove, yes.
By Jove. But they asked McLuhan once, will there ever be silence? He says, things don't exist on their own. They only exist in relationship. So when Cage went in the chamber, he heard 2 things. Me and you could get in a car right now and go from Venice to the desert. And now for 45 minutes, we'd hear the car sounds. Then we would hear our feet on the sand for 15 minutes. Then I swear, if we sat on a rock, we could hear silence. But that's because of the relationship with the other sounds.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all. It's all selective filtering.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into time. Why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music?
Again, it depends on when you want to start your historicity. And at some point you started back and like, well, why did creatures that were bilaterally symmetrical in two axes wind up predominating in the evolutionary race? I mean, if starfish had emerged, then maybe fives would be the default.
You mean, yeah, are you kind of saying this is what people say, because we have 2 hands and 2 feet, it's easy and intuitive, and it might be in sync with walking?
It could be. I mean, we don't have we don't have a place to run a controlled experiment. So my tendency with this is that I don't necessarily try and posit causality so much as I say, the human beings are doing this funny thing.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like this is how it works here. And so overwhelmingly we find, 2s, 3s, and 4s are the predominant rhythmic modalities. And larger groups tend to be collections of 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then, from there's issues of how human beings differentiate between long and short periods of time, how we divide up time, what the nature of our oratory is, how our breath cycle relates to the number of words in a sentence, all of these things. And even something as simple as the repetitive motion of the body during a work song. If the body has to bend down and then lift up and then transfer something and then bend down and lift up and transfer something, then that's probably going to self-organize according to the number of limbs that are actuated and body parts that are actuated.
Yeah.
Which would tend to make you maybe 2, or maybe if it's lower torso shifting weight and then 1 upper torso motion, that's 3. So then these are where your cultural defaults come from. They come from the engagement of the human animal with the other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And since a lot of our songs come from the different types of work that we have to do, or the reenactment and stylization for entertainment's sake of that same material, then you can posit a reason for all of that.
Yeah. But I'm just going to inventory a couple other thoughts that came up, and I'm glad what you said. It helped me. And one source says because it's in sync with our heartbeat rhythm. So I've asked people what time signature is our heartbeat rhythm in, and I get all kinds of answers. But what's your thought on that? That it's 4/4 time is popular because it's in sync with our heartbeat rhythm? No?
No.
What do you think our heartbeat rhythm is in? What time?
Seems to me like boom, 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 boom. It's a 3 with one of the beats unaccented.
Yeah. So here's Zappa. It is unnatural to play in 4/4 because we don't speak in 4/4.
That word unnatural is doing an awful lot of lifting, Frank.
Here's Beefheart. Captain Beefheart varied from what he called the mama heartbeat, that same old 4/4 rhythm. He said it's related to fascism. It's so fixative, so hypnotic, so synthesized, it's dangerous to the heart. Faster than the heartbeat, disco is dangerous. He wanted to break the non-hypnotic, no, he wanted non-hypnotic music to break the canatonic state.
I don't know, man. Looking back at a lot of that stuff, it seems tailor-made to suit the expressive needs of weird little egomaniacal wannabe hipsters like myself when I was 17 years old. I mean, it doesn't seem particularly compassionate. And by that, I mean, if you think, well, you know, human beings have been making music with each other for thousands of years. And it's a behavior that's pretty much universal. There's no human culture that doesn't have it, although there are a few that don't name it as such.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things that have kind of emerged from that process that are the result of all these historical forces. And when you label it with something with the name of a political movement that emerged, you know, like within the past 30 years, that seems like saying, you know, Britney Spears is the embodiment of everything that's wrong in culture. Wait, what? I mean, that's just like your fart is the smelliest thing ever in the entire universe.
No, Warren, I got a good Britney for you, because I learned at some point the first guy who played taped music on stage when there was live performance on stage was Stockhausen in 62. And then I went up to David Rosenboom, you know, who teaches at Cal Arts and he knows everything. And I says, who was the first one? He goes, I'm not into first. I was like, dude, I'm just trying to study this. Because Britney could go, well, I'm just doing what Stockhausen did in 62. And then I researched it deeper, and it was really the French dudes did it in the 20s or way before Stockhausen. So, this is, talk about your smart ass 17-year-old self. Here's Pauline Oliveros. You know her.
Yeah, of course.
Deep listening. So this is the LA Free Press in the summer of 69. They asked
I probably
Frank,
got that issue when I was a kid.
Yeah, they asked Frank, you mentioned Pauline Oliveros' work with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass, and you like the idea. Here's what Frank Zappa said. Not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It created a sum and difference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle that you could hear. Whether you liked it or not is another question. The concept's brilliant. Any thoughts on what Frank was saying there?
Frank is offering a completely understandable acoustical description of a Pauline Oliveros concept piece that is entirely executable. And, I mean, it was a brilliant concept, and I wouldn't have minded hearing it.
Yeah.
Because summation and difference tones have been known about for a long time. So,
yeah. It's called a summation difference tone?
Summation and difference tones.
Oh, and difference tones.
Yeah.
Okay.
The premise is that when any two tones are combined, any two pitches are combined, there will be secondary acoustic phenomena that happen at frequencies that are related mathematically to the interaction of the two frequencies that you start with. So if you play a 100 and a 100 and a 100 and a 50 cycle tone, there's going to be extra acoustic energy at something further below, something further above, due to the way in which those tones interact. And that's just an observed phenomenon. That was described by Helmholtz in On the Sensations of Tone.
Oh, I know that book. Wow. On Sensations of Tone.
So while I didn't know that Pauline Oliveros had composed that particular piece, that's an entirely in character thing for her to have done.
Yeah.
And
She was
in that whole period, I mean, that was a lot of the focus of the people who were involved in that. There was a whole group of people involved in Source magazine, Music of the Avant-Garde. Then they were all published. Nicholas Limsky called them furfuraceous, meaning flaky.
flaky.
When I was in high school, mysteriously, for some completely inscrutable reason, my high school library decided that they were going to subscribe to Source, Music of the Avant-Garde. And we got 2 issues, and for the entire school year, I was the only person in school who stayed with them. And I stayed with them so assiduously that at the end of the year, the librarian said, "Warren, you might as well just keep these."
God, you still got them in your
I
archive?
still have them. They're right
Oh
there on
my
my
God.
shelf. Yeah.
You are smart.
They're worth big bucks now.
Furformation is a word that Nikki made up for himself.
Furfuraceous. Furfuraceous. F-U-R-F-U-R-F. A-C-O-U-S. Furfuraceous.
But he made it up.
I don't think he made it up, but I think it is related to the fancy terms that you use to describe dandruff. So
he was on
used it to mean flaky.
He was on Tom Schnabel's radio show on KCRW, Keep College Radio White. And Tom goes, "Now don't use any 4-letter words. I know you use colorful language." And Nikki goes, "But in Russia, there are 13 letters." So Ruth Draper said the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Hey, that sounds good. That sounds
true.
good, but how do you do it?
Well, I mean, in the Hindustani realm, that's how concerts are set up. And so descriptions of concerts, if you read the biographies of great Hindustani musicians that are published for the enjoyment of people inside that ecosystem, descriptions of their appearances invariably include a laundry list of other great musicians who were in the audience. And the reason for that is not just that, gee, there was a lot of star power, but rather that when you have that many people of that high a caliber listening to you, then your musical performance will be lifted up by the sum total of their wisdom and aesthetic acuity.
Yeah.
And the Hindustani Mehfil is a perfect example of a small musical ecosystem that's devoted to the principle of the audience involved in a co-creative endeavor with the performer.
Yeah. Warren, I asked for 90. Can you go a little longer, or you want to just...
I can go a little longer.
Okay, let's do 2 more, and then we'll plan a part 3, hopefully. Because here's Leonard. Here's my favorite quote on part 2 was, "I'm a dick." I doubt it, dude. Okay, here's Leonard Cohen. "The only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?"
There's risk and risk. I mean, it would be a grave creative risk for me to announce at the beginning of a Hindustani concert that I was actually going to be doing experimental avant-garde Yoko Ono style assaults. And that would not be a risk that I would wish to take.
Yeah.
So the idea is that a particular culture and context dictates the amount of risk that's acceptable, and the areas within which risks can be taken and still regarded as as not being solecisms.
Yeah, because that every musician I ask that question, they go, "Oh yeah, risk plays a big part." And then Napoleon Murphy Brock, who sang with Zappa for years, said, "Oh, I leave risk in the dressing room." And I'm like, I interpreted that as he wants to come out and appear that he's confident and he knows what he's doing. What, how do you what does courage mean to you now? If you're going to incorporate risk in your creative process, is that involve courage?
It's a very localized form of courage. I mean, it's like kind of like having courage while you're playing chess, isn't it? There's not really a lot that's actually at stake.
Yeah.
You've set up a situation within which your courage is appropriate. Oh, that was a pretty daring choice to play against the major 9 chord there, Barn. Well, gee whiz, that was a pretty daring piece of syntax he just attempted, right? And I mean, when you contrast that with the actual level of risk that most human beings in history have had to undergo just in order to get to be old enough to mate,
Yeah.
then it doesn't really seem like so much.
Yeah.
So then what we are involved in is some kind of dialectic where we're trying to mediate the relationship between risk and safety so that we have some stuff that's exciting and some stuff that's not so exciting.
Yeah. Well,
that's part of why I'm a climate activist, because if our actual real world lives were full of tremendous excitement, then we would have less time to take risks in the realm of what do you play on top of a major 9th chord.
Yeah.
Which is part of why I hate Donald Trump so fucking much.
Yeah.
Right? Because I really don't want my politics to be exciting.
Yeah.
I would like my everyday governance to be completely dull, so that I can spend more time thinking about, what goes on top of a major 9th chord, or what particular ways this bit of speech text melismatic passage work will fit inside this particular raga rendition. And there are some contexts where I encourage my students or myself to take more risks because I've set up a situation where I know they're going to be rewarded for it.
Yeah. But
when I'm teaching at New England Conservatory, my students may be Western classical trained instrumentalists who've never improvised before.
Yeah.
And then when I ask them to make something up, this is a huge transformation from them. One girl told me, if my mother heard that I had taken a course that had the word improvisation, she would stop my school funding.
Well, that's funny. That's Ruth Underwood. She was classically trained, and then when Frank had her play all this music, she could play, and then he goes improvise. She goes, I can't do that. Anyways, the word hate stood out for me for a second. I just want to say, because my friend in Boston, I met him when he was 10, and he was raised a Buddhist from day one. And then I met him again 4 years later, and I says, well, what's the main thing you've learned being raised Buddhist? And he goes, not to hate. And I'm like, is hate innate in humans, or is it invented? Is hating, is the verb hating innate or invented?
The human emotional system has an innate propensity for variation in intensity.
Yeah.
And those variations differ both in intensity and in degree and in duration. And so then depending on the and in quality. So if there's a feeling of antipathy or aversion in an emotional sense, which is hyper localized in an extreme spike, then I get to call it hate.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if the feeling of irritation is hyper localized, but it's not that intense, then it's just, oh fuck, I stubbed my toe again.
yeah.
Right? And a marital disagreement, and the wife says, I hate the way you put your socks away.
Yeah.
And then we recognize that as being an articulated overreaction to too small a stimulus.
Yeah.
And just as if someone said, well, Trump mildly inconveniences me, then we would correctly diagnose that as someone either making a facetious statement for some other rhetorical purpose, or that they were somehow privileged beyond our capacity to like them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't say what I wasn't raised a Buddhist, man. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be an all compassionate blah blah blah, but I'm not.
Yeah. Okay. In can we do one more, or you got to go? Okay.
Go ahead.
So this, Viola Spolin, she was a social worker in Chicago, and she combined Fritz Perl and Martin Buber to do a social work role playing, and she practically invented comedy improv. So she spawned Second City, Saturday Night Live, and all this stuff. And here's her line: if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role does struggle play in your creative process?
When I perform Hindustani music, my hope is that the degree and intensity and specificity of struggles that I have undergone are reflected in the subtlety and the integrity of and in the sort of idiomatic correctness of what I do. That's one of the criteria that people use when they say, "Oh, so and so," you can tell so and so is a very seasoned musician.
Yeah.
You can tell that so and so has worked very hard on this, and that has in the ethical ecosystem of Hindustani music, that has a moral quality. And people can be self-entitled jerks, but if they've done their diligent practice, then they get a certain number of morality points.
Yeah.
That kind of make it harder for people to dismiss them out of hand.
Yeah.
Now, in the course of actual performance, the role of practice, as I see it, is to raise the floor, not raise the ceiling.
Yeah.
So the stipulated goal for a performance, as I explained to my students when they're getting ready to record repertoire renditions of the little khayals that we've been doing, your goals you have two goals. Fill up the time that is given to you and don't suck. And that's all. Your job is to start at the beginning, end at the end, and do everything acceptably in between.
Yeah.
And that, to my way of thinking, that's the floor. And so you always want to have the floor such that if you've got a cold and someone punched you in the face and your significant other left you and your cat died and the burrito that you ate yesterday has been making stinks come out your butt all day, and it's both noisy and inconvenient and suspiciously wet, and the accompanist is someone that you have a long-standing gripe with, can you do a halfway decent job?
Yeah.
Can you do that? And if you do that, that's all that your expected to do? Can you avoid being a dick on stage? Can you just avoid doing any of those things that are wrong? Now, then after that, if the force is with you, then you can go as high as you like.
Yeah.
And the goal there is to maximize your relationship with the audience such that they can feed you the energy that you need to make the force travel in your direction.
Back to what Ruth Draper said, is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power.
Because the illusion of separateness,
yeah,
is one of the things that music helps us transcend.
Oh, well
and
put.
when we're inside, in my realm, in the Hindustani ecosystem, then I remember when I was I was giving a concert at the University of Bombay in 1998. And it was for the music department of the university. So all the students and then all the professors. And all the professors from the music department at University of Bombay were all seated in a room, and they're all like in the front row looking at me. And the first one is, 24 inches away from me as I am singing. Okay, so there's literally 1,000 years of educated music listening focused on me at that moment. Right? And so then the work then is to not get freaked out by that, but to rather recognize that they're focusing their energies on me in the hopes of making me take off.
Yeah.
And then my job is to not fuck that up and to
Yeah.
help that along. And I will tell you a little story that I think that I use this story a lot. The two primary ragas that I sang on that particular day were Multani and Madhuvanti. Multani is an afternoon raga, and Madhuvanti is another afternoon raga. It's slightly unusual to do them in sequence because they share many notes. And so my readiness to sing Madhuvanti after Multani was appropriate programmatically, but it took a little bit of a risk, because the risk was that I would fuck it up. And the way that you fuck that up is that if you're singing Madhuvanti just after singing Multani, and you accidentally sing a flat second, which you have just been singing for 45 minutes, instead of a natural second, which is in the piece that you are now trying to sing, then you have made a mistake. And if you make a mistake, especially at the very beginning of a performance, it's hard to recover from that. And in fact, that is exactly what I did. I made the initial opening phrase of Madhuvanti, and I grazed the flat second. And this old, tired-looking dude in the front row, who had been listening to concerts since 20 years before I was born, went like he'd just bitten into something that tasted really bad. But I knew that the Hindustani ecosystem has a structure built into it, which is predicated on two things. One is shit's gonna happen. And two, if that happens, you want to find a way to acknowledge it and get on with your business. And that is that you touch your earlobe. So having made that wrong note, I reached up and touched my earlobe. And the old dude in the front row, who was looking as though he'd just bitten into something really tasty, went and did this. Because at that moment, I had demonstrated that I know that I'd made a mistake, that I knew what the mistake was, and that I knew the correct response to make to that mistake. Therefore, it was not because white boys can't jump. It was because, well, shit's going to happen. You're singing for 2 hours. What do you expect? I'm going to sing every note right? Of course you're not going to. And so then that turned him into my supporter.
Wow. And you had eye contact with him. You could see this happening.
Oh
And
man, I could smell his breath.
But it's that face that you made when he saw your earlobe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You got that down perfect.
Well, see, now that's a system that that recognizes the inevitability of these things, and then at the same time, constructs a mechanism for handling it.
Yeah, it's so much, Warren, talking with you is so much like a Mobius strip, and it's the snake eating its tail, and it's just a spiral going up and all over the place. So I really appreciate your time and energy. The little rap you just gave at the end really evoked two great lines I love to repeat that we can get into in part 3 is Bob Goldthwait, a Bobcat, the comedian, he says, "You are what you hate." And that is for next time. And then the other one is my dear friend Timothy Carey, who gave Zappa his first job scoring his film, The World's Greatest Sinner. And he manhandled James Dean, and he's in John Cassavetes films. He's a great character actor. It's Kubrick films. And he goes, "Live long, live healthier. Let thy arse make wind." Yeah, you got it from Salvador Dali. So I want to meld from music, because I have a few more music questions, into activism. And I really appreciate your time and energy. We can plan it 6 months down the line or whatever. It's good for you. I thank you so much, Warren. This has really been a delight, and you really teach me a lot. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jerry. Looking forward to talking to you again, man.
Okay, I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I
Bye now.
hope never